My brother Darius Brown, aka Officer Brown, in the building. What's up with you, bro?
Man, what's up? Thanks for having me, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, yeah, man, we're gonna get into a little bit about what you do today and just your views and perspective on things. You know, we've been in a series about justice, and we've been kind of focusing in on that a little bit because we really believe at Some First that every man is called to pursue justice. You know, it's biblical, it's in the Bible, and it's just the right thing, you know. And you know, one thing we've been focusing on is what does it look like to be involved in both the short-term fight, like this window that we're in right now, but also the lifetime calling to justice, you know. So we're going to get into all that. But before we do, you know, just introduce the people to who you are, tell them about, you know, your wife and what you do and what you're involved in.
Yeah. So my name is Darius Brown. I live and work in Waco, Texas. I grew up here actually and went to school at Waco ISD all of my life. Yes. I growing up here in Waco, I had a lot of men in my family that went through a lot of hurt and a lot of brokenness. And so I was always interested in law enforcement and what police officers do. A lot of my family members, especially the men, they were either going into jail or getting out. And so I had that was always on my mind, like, man, why do they commit crime? And so even had an uncle murdered on Waco Drive. And so I didn't know him really well, but my mom was really heartbroken behind it, the whole incident, because they felt like the people who did it weren't gonna get justice. And so, speaking of that, when I was in the second grade, I told my mom when I grow up, I'm gonna be a detective because I want to help people find justice. And so that was a really huge mark in my life. Just growing up, and I grew up in a single parent home. I knew my dad, and I went to my dad's house a lot. I didn't have a lot of good male role models growing up. I found those in the church later on, and so that definitely helped me become who I am. Of course, I got scholarships from the church. I got discipleship from the church. I got just really good leadership, and so moving forward, I went to college and studied criminal justice, and I graduated from the police academy in 2012, and I got my first police job, and I started 6 years ago, and I started working patrol for the city of Hillsborough for 3 years. Had a lot of fun there, but my heart broke for youth. And so when my heart broke for youth, I've seen a lot of youth going to jail for senseless crimes that I didn't even know before I got into law enforcement. So I'm assured that others didn't know that this was the crime that they were committing could get them in big trouble. So I wanted to find a way that I could educate young men. And in 2012, I started a program mentoring youth. And so I'm really about that. Jumping ahead, we'll talk about that more, I'm sure, later. But also, I got married this year. And his wife was
Left Ring Gang. What's up?
Yeah, yes, sir. Y'all were able to be a part of that big moment in our lives. My wife is a teacher here in Waco, and we really try our best to lay down our lives, you know, for youth here in Waco, because we do understand that they are next generation coming up, and we just try our best to pour out. And so we're in a lot of different. We work with youth in a lot of different ways in Waco, and that's pretty much who I am. What I do.
Yeah. And y'all also serve at the church, and you work with a lot of youth in the church as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Cool. Well, yeah, man. Well, you obviously have your hands full. You're not just on the beach hanging out, drinking Coronas. A lot going on.
Right.
For you, what would you say allowed you to be in a place where you can have so much on your plate and still thrive? You know, like, what would you say were the things you learned along the way that helped?
Yeah, because one thing about me, and when I got in law enforcement, that was my first big leadership role, because when I got in law enforcement, I was 21. So I
Right.
was really telling us what to do. I was just like, uh-oh, that's a lot. But then I learned quickly that if I wanted to make a difference, then law enforcement is not the only thing I can do. Like, if I really want to, I can't arrest people and think I'm making a difference. Like, there's something that goes beyond that. And so that really gave me a push to do more outside of uniform. I quickly started to get a lot of influence, but I knew that if I wanted to see a difference, then I had to do more than just clock in every day and clock out. So that really gave me the motivation to start juggling more things. So I got involved in church. Of course, I started getting involved in running my own program, and that gave me the push to do that. And of course, having good people around me, always, as you know, this is always good to run with people that love to serve. So once I got those people around me, even those days where I wanted to give up, they looked at me and said, "No, we're going to keep going." And so that, yeah.
Right. So it was other men in your life, really, and I'm sure women too, who kind of saw your ability and potential and kept calling you higher, you know, in that regard.
Right.
That's exactly what you're doing now, right? With becoming better boys and things like that. When we had y'all over, I'll never forget this. I wanna just kind of move into that area of mentorship and the whole idea of manhood and fatherhood. When we had y'all over, I think it was last year, and we had y'all over for dinner, and you were just talking about, you know, what you do as a police officer, and you told me, and you said that you had never arrested a young boy or a teenage boy who hadn't had a father, or who had a father, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've like stuck with me for a really long time since you said it. And I don't know, like, talk about that. Like, why do you think that is so significant, man? Because that's a big statement to make.
Yeah. So, you know, beyond statistics, of course, we know that, like, being in a single parent home, it definitely increases your chance by, I don't know the numbers, but a big chance of being incarcerated. And so when I started, I really want to know why a person committed crime. Like, there's a reason why you had a fight today, or the reason why you brought drugs to school. And I want to know why. Now, I would ask each individual, what's home look like? You know, because I want to know, like, what made you do this today? And, I mean, you came to school for education, but you somehow got off the path, and it didn't just happen. Like, you didn't make the decision for no reason. And I just want to know. And yeah, a lot of them would tell me, "Hey, I don't know who my dad is. You know, I made a bad choice today, but I'm noticing that they lack guidance, you know, somewhere. Like, it's not that even they're a bad kid." And that's one thing we have to realize. And I have to help my peers that I work with understand. It's not that they're a bad kid. It's just their lack of knowledge has made them make this decision. And so they don't have the same amount of love at home. And that breaks my heart as well as yours, because I'm like, man, if these kids had guidance, if these kids had mentors, if these kids had someone who step in for them and say, hey, you know, this is the way that you're supposed to handle yourself. And, you know, this is what we're going to live by. Like, if they had that extra support, where would they be?
Right.
You know?
Right.
That's what I want to be for the kids that I mentor. You know, I want my kids to say that one day my kids will never be able to say, well, nobody ever taught me, you know, like they won't never be able to go back and say, nobody ever cared for me. Nobody ever took time out for me. Nobody ever, you know, we have had dozens of strangers come in and step in the lives of these kids and just love them for who they are and pour into them, buy them stuff, tutor them, pick them up, feed them every Thursday. So I think that means a lot. And one thing for me, I realized that where would I be if I didn't have those positive role models in my life? Because easily could have been, you know, it's not, you know, the grace of God, but it's the grace of God. It's the grace of God, but it's also people that I had in my life to say, I looked at them and like, man, I want to be like that because this stuff is not right.
Right. So you took that, right? Something that you also, I mean, you work in the district you grew up in. So it's not like you're foreign to what a lot of these kids are experiencing that you're directly working with today. And it sounds to me like you are asking questions that you wish were asked to you in a way growing up, you know, and you're able to see things from that perspective. But the thing is, a lot of officers don't have that perspective. A lot of policemen don't have that perspective. And from what I've seen, personally, I'm not a police officer or anything like that, but I often see a lot of the issues that rise up in the community between community and police officers, a lack of, connection, you know, and what's going on. So how do you see that changing? Is that something that can change? Because, you know, you got people out here, defund the police today, you know, cut it off, just shut the whole system down.
Yeah.
What do you propose?
For me personally, I see changing is more minorities getting into law enforcement helps a lot. People who look like me joining the force, because that helps them get a connection with someone of color, because there are some officers who have no connection with people of color. And when you work with others that look like them, then you have to dig deeper. You know, there's nobody that's going to be mistreated of color while I'm at work. You get what I'm saying? Because they're like, okay, I work with Brown, so if I work with Brown, I know I can't do this, especially not around him, because he's going to step up. So there's another level. I mean, having diverse departments is huge. Also, you know, there's a lot of training that's going around now that also helps. Community policing. A lot of departments are starting to do having a community officer. There's some things that can be changed, but I think really, you know, when our minorities get into law enforcement, it really does help us so much because not only do it helps my family too, because my family has another respect for law enforcement. Because I mean, on both sides, it's not just one sided. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure like my siblings have a whole nother respect for law enforcement just because I'm in it, you know? And so I think we as people of color should not be opposed to criminal justice because we're like, I don't like the police. Well, if you don't like the police, I think you should become one. Like me, when I was in second grade, I obviously said that, hey, there's a gap that needs to be filled, and I'm gonna sign up. You know, as a young man, I seen that as a second, and so and whatever your role is, maybe you don't feel called for that. I understand that, but you know, like, let's not be afraid to say, well, I don't like them. Let's just get rid of them. I mean, that'd be easy, but also like, I don't like what it's going. So I want to be a police chief. I want to be a detective, or I want to be a part of the city council. You know, like we have to be to step in these areas, you know, to make a difference.
Right. Absolutely. So along those lines, right? You know, I talked about defund the police a little bit, But another big thing you hear a lot in the culture is Blue Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter. And you hear a lot of times the Blue Lives Matter is brought up in response to someone saying Black Lives Matter, or the cries of the culture for Black Lives Matter. Right. So you're in an interesting position because you're Black and blue, right? So that I know a lot of people you probably interact with wonder, like, where does Darius stand on these things? You know, when you work in police department and those are your coworkers, but you're also Black and that's your family and that's, you know, your skin, and so much of that. So how do you navigate that, and what do you want to say to people who?
Yeah, so basically, like you said, I mean, I get to be the fly on the wall in both rooms. A lot of times, I'm the opposer when I come in. When I go to the police department, I'm all Black. When I go to the community, I'm all blue. And so, you know, like, so like you said, I am Black and blue. And I mean, there's a neutral ground but of course, and I've told the church this as well, you know, I've been Black way longer than I've been blue. And I want police officers to understand that there is a huge difference when you're a person of color and you're just walking around. Like, I do have to have those fears that you don't have, you know, like I already know my badge number, just because I'm like, if they do something to me, I have a card I can pull, but not every Black man. And so I do explain that to them, and because they only see things by one side, and they are that their perception is different because they don't know anybody of color. So they're like, I only see it my way. They doing everything wrong, you know. And so I just say, hey, let me show you this, and they're like, oh, okay. And like, do you ever get afraid when a police officer pull you over? Okay, you don't. So you don't have, you know, and so we have those conversations, which is good. Back to that conversation I talked to you about earlier, is like, it's good to be in that room, because if I was never a police officer, my voice wouldn't even matter at that moment, you know? But just being in the right room allowed me to do that. And I've been able to, years ago, I've been able to do like culture training with different police officers and different like community police and one-on-one. I created this like quick slideshow that I was able to go to different police departments and talk to them how to build community, because they're like, oh my God, you're so big at building relationships with people. And I said, hey, just start by saying hello to people. It starts off by waving at people and smiling at people. It starts by and it's hard sometimes, even for me, like if I arrest a person, I can tell you that it's easy to speak to them, but I lay down my own pride and say, you know what, they're still human. Like, they made a mistake. They're still human. I want that person to know that I still care about them. And, you know, building relationships is just huge because, man, yeah. So, yeah, man, I like you said, I get to be both. On both sides. When I'm in a community and someone says like they start bashing blue lives, I'm like, hey guys, like, this is what's gonna happen when you don't have a police officer, you know, like, and so so like you said, I get to be both, and so there's obviously that neutral ground that I'm fighting, and it's hard, but yeah, man, I'm still hanging on there.
Bro, I'm praying for you, dog. I know it's not easy, just in the position you are, but I think you're exactly what's needed right now in the culture, and just a voice that not only advocates for Black people, but you also challenge, you know, your coworkers, and you have those hard conversations, you know. And I think the idea is that nobody is having these conversations, you know, with people in uniform, you know. So I think it's even encouraging to hear people like yourself actually having those conversations with people, because it's needed, you know. And the fact that you see it as well, it's not like you're just turning a blind eye, like that's not real. and everything y'all are experiencing in this phase. No, I feel this myself, you know,
Yeah.
walking down the street.
Yes, it's obvious. I mean, it's not something that, you know, like, yeah, it's very obvious. Even today, we were in the break room and they were like, yeah, Camellia Harris got nominated for Democratic vice president, you know, but they're like, she's really not black. And I said, okay, what color is she? You know, like, don't come for me. Like, what color is she then? Because if she was walking down the street, she ain't Mexican, she ain't white. So what color is she? You know? And so, hey, we're not gonna talk about politics. Okay, well then, we're not gonna talk about it then. You know, and so I will come for them. And so, you know, like, but we need to have those conversations because it's very obvious though, like when someone of color is in office, then they're mixed. But when they committing crime, then they black.
Right.
Well, what's up with that? Like, can we change? You know, and so that is something that I'm really you know, takes a lot of prayer but yeah, we're gonna have those conversations because not that we want to be offended, we still, or we have to work together, we have to have each other's back. They still have to trust me, which is hard. They still have to, you know, believe that we still cool after we have this conversation. So those conversations are needed and necessary.
Right. So in an instance like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, right, where there's this clear aggression and use of force, you know, it seems like what's going through the mind of an officer when what's going through the mind of an officer in a situation where they perceive a possible threat, and then what does the training say needs to happen? You know, and I know I'm talking about two different examples with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, but I more so want to get in the mind of an officer because I have a hard time understanding how a George Floyd or a Philando Castile or a Breonna Taylor happens. It's like, yeah, racism, and, you know, for sure there's racist stuff like that, for sure. But like, I don't know, to me it feels like there has to be a little bit even more to that than just like, I'm just racist. Almost like fear, you know, like you're afraid of people of color, you know. And I just want to understand what's going through the mind of an officer when they're entering into a perceived threat, and then so just thought, what's going through the mind of an officer?
So like, for example, I would tell you just like I said, I wasn't at the George Floyd thing. I wasn't there obviously, but I can imagine that things got crazy. And like you said, the fear that you already have people of color. I often tell people of color, when you're in uniform, can be intimidating. Like, let's be honest. I'm not so much intimidated because I grew up with people of color my whole life. So I know that person talks loud, they're gonna run up on you, but they don't mean nothing by it. Like, you know, like that's how my uncle was. And so I can relate. But other officers who grew up in a more quiet neighborhood, that grew up in the suburbs, and they may not like, that may cause them to be intimidated. This person is a lot bigger than people of color are sometimes a lot taller, a lot bigger, a lot faster. You know, like they can be intimidated, and it's obvious. I am not, because I grew up with it. So I grew up with that culture. So I often tell people of color, like, hey, like, don't be so naive to like your size, and people don't know you. Everything they've seen about you is on TV. Because even for me, there are some other cultures that I'm more cautious with, and that's where I learned that from. Like, I'm more cautious if I see someone with their hair wrapped up and they got a big robe on. I'm like, whoa, let me be careful, because I didn't grow up around that culture. So there could be some fear automatic just by perception, and that's just something that we all have to work through, because I don't want to say, okay, well, since you got a lot of robes on and you from Afghanistan and you got bombs on you, like that's not always true, but that's kind of what the media have shown us. And so what we're learning to do as law enforcement, and there's been trainings already that's been pushed out and even more to come, just like how to identify each person with a clean slate, and just knowing that, hey, you don't have to like, and even the book says, like, literally, even though you're in fear, there's certain things you can't do. Like, of course, if someone's handcuffed, you don't put their foot on their neck, obviously. You know, like if they're handcuffed, like our thing is like, we want the person to stop resisting. But if they're not, like if they're handcuffed, then they're clearly not resisting anymore. Like they're no longer a threat for me. But in the midst of a big commotion, big fight, it can, I hope I help you understand that there can be an officer who is just not that diverse and just doesn't know the culture. And so they be that. So in uniform, I will tell you this, naturally, officers have a defense up because we have a hard job. Like, people cuss us out every day. It's not like going into the office, being an accountant or being a pastor or office, whatever. Like, people are coming for you the moment you put that uniform on. So a lot of officers have this wall up to where they don't even want to build relationships. So that's what I'm trying to work on right now, even in my own department, where we work with a lot of kids. People have these walls up because we see a lot of bad things. I've had PTSD from being in law enforcement in the 6 years that I've been working here. I've seen suicide, seen deaths and car accidents. I've seen children abused. So we have a lot of walls up. But my relationship with God is, that's a whole different story. Like I can heal, and I know that God is with me. So there's a presence of the Lord. It really does make a difference in my life, which everybody doesn't have that though. There's some, and so, so there's some little bit of understanding, not to make excuses for anything that was done.
Of course.
But I want people to see that, like, an officer is going through a whole different thing, and it's not any excuse, but just some just perspective on our side, because a lot of times we don't see that. Even in training, like, they tell us to be on defense because somebody can come and grab your gun. Like, officers are dying crazy, like, be on defense because somebody can come attack you, or you're the protector, so you got to be always alert and always hard, and so it's a very hard balance, because I'm learning. Like, people might say, a lot of people say I'm too soft. Like, like they're like, oh, you're the face of the department. You don't have to do anything. You're just soft, like. And, man. But I hope that helps.
No, that's definitely helpful, bro. No, I appreciate it, man. And I think what you just gave us was a glimpse into the mind and thought process of an officer, in those situations. And hopefully, man, we're obviously not, anti-blue, blue people, but blue is not a skin color as well. It's a profession. But I personally don't believe just throwing the whole police department away. Look, at the end of the day, I'm still gonna call Officer Brown if something's popping off right in front of my house, So I do think there needs to be some balance to the conversation personally, because sometimes I think in just pain or emotion, we can kind of make these claims but not think further down the line of what that actually means, So I appreciate you.
I had one officer. I mean, he was a police supervisor, and he had every call that we went on, every person that we interacted with, we had to leave a satisfaction survey, because he said we were part of customer service. And I think that was awesome, because everybody in our whole department, they were like, okay, I got to be good because, you know, like, this person is going to get a satisfaction survey. It was a call. Of course, I don't think we gave them to the people that we arrested, but like, you know, you're going to get bad satisfaction. But like a lot of the calls that we went on, and that really put us in a different mindset because we're like, I'm giving them this is your customer service, and we were the #1 department within the whole district, you know, and because like I want y'all to be great, you know, I want y'all to have great attitudes. I want you showing up with an attitude because you're having a hard day, and we, you know, a lot of they have their own problems too, which it could be overworked. You know, all this work can work 60, 70 hours a week. A lot of it is just to make up for money they can get overtime, and it could be crazy. I've worked a lot of, I mean, my old shift, I worked 5 12-hour shifts a week, which is 60 hours. So that's a lot, you know, that's a lot when you think about, you know, time away from my family. You know, I'm driving back and forth to work this hour. So it's a lot of stress involved, and we know that. I mean, it's obvious. So I think really the black and the blue, we should really just show grace. I think that it's a lot of grace. And there's a lot of loopholes in criminal justice system that I see that needs to be fixed. And so I'm here for that. And of course, education in our minority communities. I'm like, who's doing that? So I'm looking for different who's educating our young people about what law enforcement is, who they are, who's bridging that gap. And so that's the questions that I'm really looking forward to answering and working towards. Even if I'm teaching my kids like one law a week, or like what platform do I get on so I can teach a law like theft of aluminum. Like, for example, theft of aluminum is a felony. So there are some kids who are stealing, like, you know, the cans that people collect. He steals the cans. He gets charged with a felony because he stole aluminum. But your lack of knowledge, you know what I'm saying? But your lack of knowledge, you didn't know that. All you thought you were doing is stealing cans. You stole the cans, cashed them in down here at the middle place, and then they got your picture, and they got your ID, and you 16, 17 years old, and you're just stealing cans, but that's a felony because somewhere, you know, a lawmaker said that people were going in buildings stealing metal, and they'll charge you with that same thing. Not to say that's just one. I've seen that case personally. I've seen a kid. And so things like that, if we could just be more educated in what the criminal system does to your record and how it keeps you from good communities and how it keeps you from good jobs, then people would stay away. Because my mom would tell me, like, Darius, like, you have to stay away because they're not going to give you a break. So you have to walk the straight and narrow. And sometimes in our cultures and our community, my wife and I, we moved to an all-black community. And a lot of times here, they think that jail ain't that bad. It's just one time, just a small charge. No, you know, like, oh, so just education will help that out so much.
Yeah, it's funny, man. A lot of people, man, I'll be out before the commercial break over, you know, and just like the mentality of like, I definitely agree, man, because I hear that a lot. Man, this is good stuff, bro. I want you to talk about, because you talk about the education piece, you're actually doing it, you know? So with Becoming Better Boys is one of the ways where you are creating a better way, a better pathway for the next generation of men, you know? And that's a big thing, like at Son First, that we're about, is how do we go back and repave the way for the next generation of men? So you're doing that. So tell the people about that, how they can support, because I really do want people to like be able to know practical ways to support what you do.
Yeah. So I started Becoming Better Boys, 12 kids who live right here in Waco, Texas, and Stella Maxey. And a lot of 95% of my kids don't have fathers at home, and we just start teaching them basic lessons every Thursday night. And so what we do is we teach them how to be a good friend. We'll have another lesson on a biblical, what David and Goliath, because, you know, that's some nuggets in there that they can learn about life. And we teach them how to cook, how to clean, how to, you know, we do community projects. And my wife and I, she has a girls group. And so, but as far as the guys, man, really, you could just reach out to me by email or social media platform. We and we can get you signed up to volunteer. That's one thing that we really need a lot is just volunteers to come and be committed. People of color. I got Baylor students, but black men will be great, especially if you don't have the time to come every Thursday. Maybe 2 weeks out of the month would be great. Coming and doing a presentation about what you do or something that just point out to our kids, because man, they really are exposed to a whole different world. We've had accountants. Man, I want to be an accountant when I grew up, and so that's our purpose. Just giving them a lot of things, because a lot of times people tell them that you ain't good enough for nothing other than selling drugs or athletics, and our kids have so much. And you know this too by just doing, you know, Stars mentoring. Like our kids have so many talents, and they're so gifted that far beyond athletics and far beyond, you know, failure. So yeah, man, they can. We do all of our mentoring at the YMCA. I don't know what this semester would look like but I'm definitely like willing to connect with some people who are interested in mentoring in the Waco area, or even people that live out of town. Like, hey, I live out of town. I'm interested in starting a boys program. How do I get started? COVID definitely changes a lot of things, but our mission is still the same, and we really want support kids. And we built lasting relationships with these kids, and they can say that, hey, I knew one person who worked every day. He was married. He raised his family with integrity. You know, and so just having that connection is big.
Right. It's good stuff, bro. I appreciate you, man. And so what's the email they can email, and what's the social media they can follow?
Yeah, so you can follow my wife and I's page is Keeping Up with the Browns, or Speak D on Instagram. Also, my email is Darius.Brown@wacoisd.org. That's the one you can reach out to me for mentoring. Yeah, and if you know any kids that want to come and want to be a part, that's also a great resource for them. Like I said, we every Thursday night, and we have so many partners, businesses that contribute. So thanks, for giving me this opportunity. Yeah,
Absolutely, bro. Well, appreciate you. I'm gonna let you get to wifey. You talking about you gotta cater to her, so I don't know what that means, but I'm gonna just
she's having a baby next month, so I gotta have some where I'm just like, okay, what you want me to do for you?
Right. I hear that, brother. Cool. Well, appreciate you again, man. Have a good one.
All right, you too.